Anyway, different story. And then here the light bulb's not working.
Is the question, how do we judge a person in society?
How do we judge a person in society? Right, okay, the answer. So the question was, or the answer is, money and status. Right. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he's got, as you know, Majmu' Fatawa, which is 30-something volumes. And within that, he's got a treatise, a small essay, which is talking about the meaning of the names of Allah, Al-Hayy and Al-Qayyum. Yeah, it comes a lot in the Quran, we recite every day for protection, etc. And in that, he was explaining what Hayy Qayyum is. And within that context, and what I'm going to do here is give you like sort of like a diagram, because I had it like sort of like sketched in my head. This Risala is extremely short, it's probably about 20-30 pages, it's probably not even that much. And in that he's explained what Hayy Qayyum is, etc. But within that, he's also benefited us in other ways, and this is one of the ways that he's benefited us in. Basically, the question here is, what drives a person? Any ideas? To cling to the dunya. To cling to the dunya. And all of your desires and all of your wants and all of your sins or whatever weaknesses and all of that are pinned down to two things. That's what Allah says in Surah Haqqah, halaka anni maliya. What is it? Ma aghna anni sultaniya. My money is gone and my status is gone. This then, the Shaykh went on to talk about something else, which is the meaning of batil. What's the meaning of batil? Batil in Arabic is used in the Quran extensively, but in English we often translate it as falsehood. وَجَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Allah uses that in Surah Al-Isra. So what's the meaning of batil? So the Shaykh, he basically said batil has two meanings. Something which doesn't have or doesn't get something that it doesn't deserve, or something which doesn't have an actual benefit in itself. The dunya doesn't actually have a benefit in of itself, and more of it is harmful because people are led by these two things, the money and the status. And then he went on to talk about the relevance of Hayy and Qayyum, and he went on to say that Hayy is that he's ever living and he doesn't need us and he's completely free from us needing us, etc. And Al-Qayyum is that the one he is supporting and he never gets tired and he never gets unable to support. He went on to talk about other things, and I had that diagram in my head, but some of it's got lost. But this is basically what he was saying also. Now the reason why I mentioned that is because he was talking also then about Al-Hayy al-Qayyum is the one who supports his slaves. And his slaves are those who live in the dunya not for the sake of the dunya. So this is the question that I initially wanted to ask is, what do you think your purpose in life is? And I'm pretty sure everyone will say, well, it's to worship Allah, etc., and etc., etc. But this is a benefit that I got from one of our mashayikh also, is that if you look at what was given to the Anbiya, every single prophet, every single message that has come from Adam all the way to Prophet ﷺ, they were given things into the dunya not for the sake of the dunya. The Prophet ﷺ had the moon split. It doesn't matter if you're the richest and the most powerful person on earth, you will not be able to replicate that. They were given things in the dunya that nobody else can ever possibly imagine. But despite that, they all lived simple lives and they were not attached to the dunya at all. The dunya was made open for them. But why is that? How does that work then? What's the understanding? The point here is that they were given the dunya not for the sake of obtaining it. Not for the sake of obtaining it. And this now goes on to the virtue of those people who are poor and the needy, and those people who will then exercise sabr. وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. And there is a connection between those people here who are poor and those people who remain consistent in making dhikr and dua to Allah. Whereas those people who are not poor are diverted and distracted. And Allah Jalla wa Ala is telling the Prophet ﷺ here, don't stretch your eyes to this part of the board here. Stay on that side over there. Because that is the reason for your creation. That is the reason why you have been sent. And this is the reason why we have given you from the dunya also. But don't get distracted. Because when you get distracted, you'll end up here. And then this will be your end. Hadith 252. Shall I not inform you about the people of Jannah? Is every modest and humble person, a person who is accounted weak and is looked down upon, and if he adjures Allah, like he has sabr, Allah will certainly give him what he desires. And shall I not tell you the people of the hellfire? The opposite. Those people who are violent, those people who are proud, and those people who thought that they had a greater purpose in life. Salim bin Sa'd al-Sa'di reported the Prophet ﷺ was sitting, and I'm sure you've had this hadith before also, a man walked past and people saw this man to be very noble and very rich and etc. And they said, yeah, this man, he's the best of all people, and if he was to ask for my daughters, yeah, we'll give it to him, hand in marriage, and yeah, he's really good. The Prophet remained quiet. Another man walked by and they said, look at this guy, he's despicable and he's weak and he's poor and he's meaningless. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the other man is better than the other. The poor man is better than the other. Now why is that? Our Shaykh, when he was explaining, when he was actually giving a lecture about the realities of the life and poverty, etc., he gave us this benefit, and I thought this was a very interesting benefit. He said, from the worst mindsets that exist in the people is that they have to compare themselves to others. And that's exactly what this hadith is saying. Group of people, the companions, the same with the Prophet ﷺ, they looked at another man. Because of his wealth, they thought he was better. Because of his status, they thought he was better. Back on the board here. The more wealth, this is what the Shaykh is saying, the more wealth an individual has, the higher level of nobility we give to him. And his proposal will always be accepted. If such a person attends a gathering, the audience hang on to every single word. This is a guy, he's worth £1 billion and he's really, really famous and all that kind of stuff. This is the case, even if he's really, really rich, but he could be the most vile and disgusting and even the most stingiest of people. He doesn't even need to spend a penny for you to love him. This is even the case, even if he doesn't spend a penny, but despite that fact, his wealth is sufficient for his reputation and his superiority to be confirmed amongst all of the people and for him to be accepted in that way. If he orders a command, they will not be reluctant to obey him. But the opposite is also true. A poor man comes, he might have iman, he might have taqwa, he might be sincere, he might have good manners and all those things. All of that is down the drain. Nobody really cares about those things. And this is exactly what the Prophet ﷺ is saying here. 254, there was a dispute between hell and hell. Hell and hell. There was a dispute between hell and Jannah. A dispute between hell and Jannah. They talk, they are alive, and they have the faculties to communicate. The hellfire said, the haughty and the proud are my inmates. I'm going to swallow all of them up. And Jannah said, the modest and the humble are my residents. Thereupon Allah Jalla wa Ala said, you are my mercy, and I will show those people who, I will give you from my mercy those people who are destined for that place. And then he said to the hellfire, you are a means of my punishment. This is very important because Allah doesn't want us to be punished. By which I will punish some of my slaves as I wish, and each of you will have its fill. So you don't need to argue with one another. Again, Shaykh Sa'd said, caution, it is possible that a person enters the blazing fire by even half a date. Blazing fire by even half a date. How much is a date worth in our society? You can get a pack for like, I don't know, about £2, £3, half a kilo. And that's, in that you probably got about hundreds of dates. Half a date, which we're talking about pennies, you can enter hellfire. Parallel to this, the Prophet ﷺ also told us in another hadith, fear the hellfire, even if it is to give sincerely for the sake of Allah, half a date, to help those people who are poor and needy. This is what he's referring to here, this is what he's alluding to. Parallel to this, the Prophet ﷺ has promised a great reward, and they're entering into Jannah to those who vary in their degree up to 40 different stages. What he's saying here is that person would enter into Jannah and a different, his level of reward could be of different levels, as in each level of Jannah has more than 100 ranks. in each level. So this is what he's saying here. A person could give even something very, very minute, but have his level elevated in different ranks and stages. The lowest of them is a person who feeds milk from a sheep that he owns. Minor was his expenditure, but multiplied was his reward. And this is referring to another hadith also. The Prophet ﷺ told us that a man, he gave from milk from a sheep, and his reward was multiplied in a manner that he couldn't even imagine. There's also another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ has told us that on the day of judgment, a person gives a meaningless amount sincerely for the sake of Allah to a person who is dire and in dire need, and somebody who is stricken by poverty, etc. Allah Jalla wa Ala will take that in his hand and he will multiply it in his hand. So a person might think, I've just given a tenner. On the day of judgment, Allah will multiply, and he will multiply in front of you with his hand. On the day of judgment, there will be brought forth a bulky person, a person who is really, really fat. And people think, now this word, this description here, bulky, some of them have said, well, bulky in the sense that he is really big and greedy and he's had a lot of the dunya. But others have also said that it refers to him having a lot of the dunya. Whatever the case, he will have less of a value, and his scales will be even lighter than the wing of a mosquito. The point here that we're seeing is looking at this hadith again. I believe this is probably why he's gone with this as being one of the very first ones. Is the mindset. Why are you here? Why have you been given this wealth? Why are you in the dunya? When the companions and the prophets and the messengers themselves didn't indulge in the dunya, and they understood this very well, that this could be the cause for your destruction. Many people. Okay, so where were we? Hadith number 256. A black woman. Okay, this is about the woman who passed away, and she was really, really poor, and she had absolutely nothing. And what she used to do is that she used to clean the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. So she passed away during the night. So the companions buried her. The Prophet ﷺ got extremely annoyed at this. And they thought, look, she's just somebody that's insignificant. Nobody really talks about her. Nobody talks to her. She cleans the masjid. Yeah, we have respect for her and stuff. She's just another sister, random. The Prophet ﷺ got annoyed, and he said to the companions, show me where her grave is. And he went and prayed over her grave, and then he said this statement here: these graves cover those with darkness, and Allah illuminates them for the inmates of those graves as a result of my supplication for them. The point here is that the Prophet ﷺ was connected and attached to those people who were poor and who had a need, and who were not connected to the dunya themselves because they had nothing to be connected to the dunya for. Those people will remind you of the akhirah. Many a person with shaggy and dusty hair, like a disheveled appearance, driven away from the doors because of his poverty. Well, if he were to swear by Allah and make a supplication, Allah would answer it for them. Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, I stood by the gates of Jannah, and he said, the most people that I saw in the hellfire were those people who were wealthy. And he also described some of those inmates of the hellfire being women. Again, why? We know through other narrations, wealthy, quite obvious, but women, because they were ungrateful. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu further reported the Prophet ﷺ said that there happened to pass them a slave girl who had, okay, let me just try and summarize this for us. Again, this is similar to the meanings that we've had before about people who are being tyrannical and being oppressive over those people who are poor, and the Prophet ﷺ supporting, and Allah Jalla wa Ala aiding those people who are being oppressed and who are poor. Next chapter, connected to poverty and connected to, again, what we have on the board here, showing empathy to orphans and all those in need. Orphans is an example because they are arguably within society, maybe not our society, but emotionally probably the most weakest. They have no parents, they have no father, they have no connection really to people. The people who are displaced, etc., being good to them and being showing empathy and humility towards them is from the best of deeds. Allah tells us in many different ayat, be merciful towards them. Allah is telling us again here in Surah Al-Kahf, where the Shaykh has repeated it, remain firm and be of assistance to these people, and don't let the dunya divert you from this, and don't become distracted because of that. Allah also talks about in Surah Duha, where Allah talks about the victory that He gave to the Prophet ﷺ. He himself was an orphan, but Allah gave him sustenance. He himself was weak, Allah made him strong. He himself was poor, Allah gave him poverty. He was himself didn't have guidance and he didn't have wahi, but Allah gave it him. So as all of this, as a result of all this, Allah says, so therefore, if an orphan comes to you, a person who is needy, don't dispel them, don't shun them. If somebody is coming and asking you or begging or has a need, don't repel them also, as a favor, as a shukr. And also from the characteristics of the people of Quraysh at that time is that they were very haughty towards those people who are weaker and poorer. So if you had no status and if you had no money, I could treat you however I wanted. Nobody can stop me from doing that. And this is the meaning of Surah Al-Ma'un. I'm sure we've all memorized it, we've all recite it. Allah is telling us, don't you see those people who deny the judgment? Bid-deen. Deen here refers to judgment. Don't they realize that they're going to stand in front of Allah and Allah is going to account them for their wealth and the way they treat other people? فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُ الْيَتِيمِ. They don't want to support, they reject, they repel. وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. And they will not show any kind of maintenance towards those people who are poor and weak and needy. They are arrogant. They are looking above them and they don't feel that it's their responsibility to do so. Whereas Islam is teaching us that it is our responsibility. And the reason why it's our responsibility is because we don't want to be on this board. And we want to support. And we want to nurture. And we want to guide people towards the actual meaning of the dunya. And there are many hadith here talking about orphans. But the meaning is talking about the poor and the needy and those people who are stricken by poverty, and those people, it might not necessarily be someone in a different country, it might be someone here that needs us. Prophet ﷺ said that anybody who takes care of an orphan, and I will be like this, and he illustrated it with his two fingers, with him on Yawm al-Qiyamah. That's an orphan. But we also know that the Prophet ﷺ, I don't know if it's been narrated here, he said that a person who supports a woman who has been widowed and looks after her and supports her, then he is in for the sake of Allah. He is going and he is persevering for the sake of Allah. That action is considered as him being as a mujahid. The Prophet ﷺ also said, he who takes care of orphans, whether he is a relative or a stranger, will be in Jannah, and he will be like this with me. And then again illustrated with his two fingers. A miskeen is not. So again, look here, the Shaykh is talking about the needy. It's not specific to those people who are orphans. It's not a label, it's a characteristic, if that makes sense. A needy person should not be turned away with a date or two or a morsel or two. So now, who is a miskeen? Who is a person who doesn't have anything? A true miskeen is the one, despite his poverty, abstains from begging. And the point here is that those people who are in need will show you their need. But those people who are of a level before that or above that are those people who are remaining or having sabr despite their difficulty that they are going through. And Allah talks about that also in Surah Al-Baqarah. One who strives to help the widows, again this is the hadith we're talking about, is like the one who is out and fighting for the sake of Allah. The narrator who narrated this hadith said, I think that he ﷺ also added, I shall regard him as the one who stands up for prayer without rest and the one who observes fast continuously. Every single day throughout the whole year, a person who is supporting another woman, he's not even related to her, he doesn't even know her, but because she is a widow and he feels sorry for her and she has a genuine need, maybe it's emotional, maybe it's financial, it could be anything. The Prophet ﷺ has regarded such a person as somebody who is constantly fasting and constantly standing 8, 9, 10 hours throughout the night to pray. The worst food in a walima, when you have a walima, the worst kind of walima and the worst kind of food that could ever be served is where the poor are refused to come. You're not invited. He who rejects an invitation disobeys Allah and His Messenger, in the rest of the hadith. Whoever supports two girls, again, we're talking about support. Again, here we're talking about responsibility. Support is the key word, not orphan, not needy. Responsibility and assistance and cooperation. Whoever supports two girls. So now, for example, if a person was to have a daughter, then he had another daughter, and he had another daughter. If he nurtures them correctly and remains responsible over them, not just letting them to do whatever they want, making sure that they get the best of education, they get the best of upbringing, all those things. The Prophet ﷺ has said, he and I will be like this on Yawm al-Qiyam. Aisha radiallahu anha reported, a woman came to me with two daughters, and she asked, but she found nothing except one date, piece of a date. So I gave it to her. She accepted it and divided it between two of her daughters, and she had nothing. She received a date. She was poor herself. She split that date in half and gave it to her daughters. She carried on starving. Then she got up and went out. And the Messenger of Allah ﷺ commented on this, and he said, he who is involved in the responsibility of bringing up daughters, and he is compassionate towards them, he is forbearing towards them, he's generous towards them, they will be a cause of their protection from the hellfire. Is it about the daughter? Is it about the mother? It's not about that. It's about that compassion. It's about that empathy. It's about that responsibility. A poor woman came carrying her daughter. Okay, so that's similar here. Then she divided it. Sorry, that's the same hadith. Verily, Allah is assured Jannah, and there will be a cause of rescue for that person from the hellfire. The Prophet ﷺ also used to supplicate, "Oh Allah, I declare inviolable the rights of the two weak ones." And he used to make supplication in this manner. Oh Allah, protect two very weak amongst us, the orphans and women. And we're going to talk about that in the next chapter a bit more. Sa'd considered himself better than his inferiors. So the Prophet ﷺ said to him, you are given help and provisions because of your weak ones. He was wealthy. And he thought, because of my wealth, and this is a companion, imagine. He thought, because of my wealth, there may be a degree of betterment that I have over other people, because Allah has given me this from the dunya because of my good deeds, and I can use that to help other people. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, the only reason why you are given your rizq, the only reason why you're given happiness and stability in your life, and the way that your dua continues to be accepted, and the way that you can maintain steadfastness, is that you are showing empathy and compassion and that responsibility towards your weak ones. Seek among your weak ones, for you are given provision. This is the hadith. Very similar. Look after for those people who are weak and needy and need that level of responsibility. It might not necessarily, like again, we're not talking about weak. It might not be physical, and it might not be material. It could even be emotional. It could even be intellectual. Because you are given provisions and you are supported and helped only because of that level of connection that you have with these people. So the Shaykh ends these two chapters with that hadith. Again, here we're talking about being supportive towards the weak and the orphans and the needy, etc. Then he moves on to another chapter, which is advice to women. Now he's going to talk about, which is very closely connected to supporting the needy and the orphans. Why? Because me as a man, I'm a husband, and she as a woman is my wife. We both need each other. And this is the bedrock of any kind of Islamic society. And any kind of prosperity and any kind of growth in Iman will only come about when people become responsible in that manner. So now you can think, okay, fair enough, those people in Burma need my help. I'm going to go help them. I might physically go there. I might, give some donations, etc. Other Muslims, weak Muslims, any part of the world. But responsibility and this empathy and all these things that we were talking about now, being nice and showing compassion and all that kind of stuff, has to start closer. And if we can sort the problems out in ourselves and our homes, then that's the only way success will spread. And we'll talk about that a bit more. Ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, he said that the companions used to ask about the responsibilities and the rights of the dependents. They used to ask excessively to the Prophet ﷺ, what about this? What about that? What about my wife? What about my children? What about my work? What about my etiquettes? And the Shaykh gave several examples, but here are just four of them. Allah says in Surah Baqarah, and Surah Baqarah is definitely the longest surah in the Quran, and it's arguably the most virtuous after the Fatiha. It has Ayatul Kursi in it. Umar radiallahu anhu, I'm sure you are aware, used to study that surah at length. There's a lot of virtue in Surah Baqarah. The Prophet ﷺ said, you recite it, shaitan runs away from you, and it will come as a protection for you, Yawm al-Qiyamah. There's a great deal of virtue. In this surah, Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah is saying, they ask you. Who is they and what are they asking? People used to come up to the Prophet ﷺ on a regular basis. Question number one, Ya Muhammad, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how should we spend on our family? Ya Rasulullah, what shall we spend from? Ya Rasulullah, how can we support those people that need that support, the orphans? Ya Rasulullah, what about menstruation and the connection that I need to give towards my wife and that compassion? When do I cut it off? When do I maintain it? Am I allowed to maintain it? Am I allowed to keep that level going even though she's menstruating? Because there were a lot of myths at that time. Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah is saying, this gives you an insight to their mindset towards the level of responsibility that they used to have over those dependents. That's very important, because when we're talking about marriage, a lot of people isolate women's rights in Islam and they say, look how regressive it is and look how oppressive it is and all those kind of things. But it's not like, if you look at one aspect and say, look, yeah, she has to cover. Yeah, fair enough, we're not going to shy away from that. She does have to cover. But why is that there? If you're going to look at, if you're going to take these two chapters out and all those hadith and all these ayat, if you're going to take this historical fact out, then you're not going to get the correct picture of it. Allah is saying in Surah An-Nisa, live with them in the most honorable manner. وَأَشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Allah is also saying here that you will not always be able to live with them in the best of ways. I mean, it's going to happen, isn't it? Arguments are going to happen, disagreements are going to happen, things are going to happen. But Allah is saying here that if you reconcile, if you sacrifice, if you look at all those things that we've just talked about compassion and responsibility, then Allah is Ghafoor Rahim. What does that mean, Ghafoor Rahim? He will overlook and He will rectify and He will solve your problems. And Rahim, He will continue to give you from His favors that He has given you from before. And He will maintain your house. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh reports that the Messenger of Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, take my advice with regards to women. I'm giving you stern advice when it comes to the treatment of women. Act towards them kindly. This is very controversial, this hadith, because they were created from a rib, and the most crooked part of the rib from Adam alayhi salam. And if you try, because they're crooked in their nature, if you try to straighten it, you'll break them. So what they've said, those people who try to attack Islam, etc., and say, look, Islam is very not equal, it's anti-equality, and it's quite autocratic over women. You have to control your women, that kind of stuff. But what's the meaning of the hadith? Ibn Baz, when he quoted this hadith in one of his fatwa, he said it's upon men. What this means is that men have to be patient. Women have issues. But does this now, if you take this in isolation, yeah, okay, women got issues, the guys are alright, but the women's are the issues. That's why they have to cover up, we don't have to cover up. That's not how it is though, isn't it? If you take one hadith in isolation, then you're not going to understand the religion. This hadith is talking about a man's attitude towards his wife. That's what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us here. And we know that because the hadith begins with that and it ends with that. He's not talking to women. He's not saying you women are corrupt and it's in your nature and you'll never be sorted out. He would never say anything like that. He was kind towards them and he was compassionate towards them. He even called them glass vessels. He even called them, they are our glass vessels. Treat them with the utmost respect. So this is talking about men and it's targeted at men and he's reminding men, look, men, be patient. Because if you lose your patience, you will break the household. You will break that bond that you have. You will break that nikah that you try to get into. Then what the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us here is to leave it, remain crooked. What does that mean? It means seek what's better, sacrifice, don't be hasty, be patient, adopt in giving advice, reminding, until she then sees the errors that she has got in herself, and that crookedness will then become upright by itself. So the Prophet ﷺ is actually, I'm sure I've said this before, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on him. Whenever somebody tries to level an attack on Islam using something which is Islamic text, that proof, that dalil that they're trying to use is actually a counter dalil for themselves. It's always the case. And this is what we're saying here. You're saying that Islam is being oppressive towards women and is teaching men to be, controlling over women. The hadith is actually being the actual opposite. The complete opposite. The Prophet ﷺ is teaching us here, be nice, be kind, advise. If she's got issues, she could have weaknesses. Maybe it's not because it's got anything to do with her being a woman. She could just have issues just because that's her personality. The Prophet ﷺ is telling us here, be kind. Adopt a manner, use wisdom, be organized until she becomes upright. That is what you have been commanded with, is to treat women in the best of respect. That's what this hadith means. Some of you beat your wives, the Prophet ﷺ, as if they were slaves, and then at the end of the day, you go and have relations with them. All day, you treat them rough. All day, you are harsh and you even hit them. But at the end of the day, you want to be compassionate and you want to benefit yourself from it. This is what Ibn Taymiyyah is saying. Rahimahullah. He said, what this hadith means is that you're treating them as if they're your slaves, as if they're your servants, as if they're your prisoners. And it's unfortunate now, advice to women, and this is very good, may Allah have mercy on Imam al-Nawawi, because he's not talking about your wives. He's talking about your mothers, he's talking about your daughters, he's talking about your nieces, he's talking about your sisters. And this is general, it applies to all of them. And we even find now, unfortunately, you can replace that with mother quite easily. And you could probably replace that with maybe not beat, maybe that might be a bit far-fetched, even though I'm sure it exists. May Allah protect us and aid those people who are being tested in that manner. But talking down to your parents and looking at them as if they're your slaves. Yeah, make me this and make me that, do this for me. Well, it should be the other way around. You should be looking after them. Treating them as if they are your slaves and your prisoners. You are commanding your parents, I want to eat this, or you tell your sister, do that for me, or your daughter, or whatever it is. There is no connection between man and wife in this scenario. This is what this hadith is teaching us. If you treat them in this manner, then that connection is gone. Whereas marriage must be built upon love and compassion and mutual understanding. Therefore, this narration prohibits anything which is vile in statement, in action, and in your attitudes, even looks, even your behavior, even your body language. How can a person be rude to his wife throughout the day, and at night time he wants something from her, pretending to be compassionate? He only wants to fulfill his desires. Such an attitude doesn't befit somebody who has common sense, let alone a believer. Ibn Taymiyyah, a believer must not hate his wife, who is a believing woman. If he dislikes something from her, there is definitely going to be something other things that he would like from her. So let's count your favors and your blessings. A man, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, again, this whole chapter I've taken benefits from him because it's very good the way he explained it. A man must be, and this is also very good for us also, because here we have an orthodox scholar, a classical scholar who came in our contemporary times with a classical understanding. So this is clearly showing here that we're not being apologetic. We don't have to change our religion. We don't have to change anything. If you have that correct understanding of the religion, then the kuffar will understand what this religion is actually about. You won't need to say, well, that hadith, let's ignore it, or that means something else, or let's change it, or anything like that. You don't have to. That is the hadith. Yeah, she is crooked. That's what the hadith said. But what does it actually mean? It's not how you think it means. And when you understand what it actually means, you will see the beauty of Islam. And this is, you will only get that if you follow the correct methodology. Those people from different sects, they don't have that. So then you will find some people being apologetic. There's some people you will say, okay, well, we can leave aside hijab, we can leave aside all these things and become murji and become secular. And you can say, okay, my Islam is in my heart and only Allah can judge me, because you got narrations like that. And it exists. But then you have the flip side, you do have the flip side, where people will say, yes, she is crooked and she is inferior and she doesn't have any rights. The Prophet said she's crooked. Who are you to tell me that she's not crooked? And you get that. But that again, we're looking at two very extremes. One very, radical extreme, and then the other one is very liberal extreme. But here, in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is telling us the point that you've got married is not that you live with a hurul ain. The point that you've got married is that you yourself you're not a Nabi or a Prophet or a Messenger. The point that you got married for is that you work with each other to work towards Jannah, and that you aid each other in that. And the only way you're going to do that is realize, look, okay, you've got mistakes and I've got mistakes. Let's patch over those mistakes and let's work on the things that are good so that the bad will get removed. A man must be just about himself also, Ibn Uthaymeen is saying. Justice is to proportionate good and bad. This is a very good point here also. A person doesn't proportionate it sometimes. She makes food and it's not very nice in her cooking or whatever it could be, or she doesn't clean enough, or she doesn't do certain things enough. And then he'll say, oh, okay, everything is bad about her. There's no good in her at all. You know what I'm trying to say? That's not proportionate. Look at what is greater and what needs work. If she has been good, and there's a very interesting comment that you will see from Umar radiallahu anh, talking about a man who's complaining about his wife. If she has been good or bad to you, don't let that prevent you thinking about all the other good things that she has done. Don't limit her favors to one or two, or limit them into a particular bracket. If her harm, okay, so now it might also be that you might think, well, realistically, she isn't very good. Her iman isn't very strong. She listens to music. She watches things that she shouldn't be watching. She doesn't dress properly when she goes outside. There might actually be more bad than good. That's possible. What do you do in that scenario now? You should pardon and advise. And if it's possible, sacrifice. Reconcile. Let's try and sort this out. Another hadith here, the Prophet ﷺ, again, a very long hadith, you can probably read this for yourself, but again, the message here is treat them in the best manner. Because you have a degree of responsibility over that, and you will be questioned about that. You will be questioned about your mothers. You'll be questioned about your sisters. You'll be questioned about your daughters and your wives and your nieces and all those people that you are responsible for. If you're not responsible for them, then you won't be questioned. But if you are, then you will be. And then again, similar message to what we've seen before. Treat them nicely. Give them the best of support. If they ask you for £10, give them £20. If they ask you, let's go out for a meal, yeah, take them to a nice place. If they need some clothes, don't just buy Primark. Go somewhere else. Just go to the next shop next door. That might be like £10 more. Give them what is good. Make them happy. Right. At this point, I've put this here because most of us, I believe, are not married. Right? But even those people who are married, the rule applies. Now, I actually refer this myself to the Islamic framework of society. Okay? Again, so now we're talking about if a person comes to you about women's rights, if a person comes to you about all these other things. If you understand this, then you go a very long way in trying to explain to them why Islam is so strict and why we've got laws and why we follow those laws strictly. Right. What does Islam want from you? Islam, number one, wants from you, become a good Muslim. Become responsible. Become upright. Worship your Lord. Be a good person. Have good behavior. Have nice speech. Have good thoughts. All of those things, all those nice things that you get taught, and you can even ever imagine from Prophet ﷺ, that's what you need to be to the best of your ability. If you don't do that, then you can't go to step 2. You can't go to step 2. If you've got a daughter now, would you allow her to get married to a person who is weak in his iman? Would you? Honestly, you wouldn't. Even if right now you're weak in your own iman, you wouldn't want that for your daughter. The very first thing you would ask is, what mosque does he go to? Or where does he pray? Or where has he studied? Or something like that, you know what I'm trying to say? Then maybe you will ask about, where has he studied and where is he going in his life? Work on yourself. And this is what the ulama are completely agreed on also. That a person, a wali, the whole reason there is a wali there, one of the reasons, is that he needs to investigate, is this guy good or not? What's his plan? What's his strategy? What will he do if there is a problem? How is he going to reconcile? Is he going to make it even more bent, or is he going to make it upright? What's he going to do? Work on yourself. If you can't work on yourself, then you can't go to step number 2. Once you've gotten to step number 2, you need to help your own family. You're not married yet, but you need to help your own family, your brothers, your sisters, your parents. Let's become better, all of us. All of us. Let's do this. Once you've got that, but that's not a condition to go to step number 3, because you might not be able to achieve that. But then, if you've done that, then from step number 1, then you can then go on to step number 3. Step number 3 now, a person who prays 5 times a day, who's taking his religion seriously, he's trying to be the best that he can he go marry somebody who doesn't pray and she doesn't really care about religion? Doesn't make sense. Nobody would do that. You'd look for somebody who is compatible and like-minded. This is the same thing here. Taqwa will marry taqwa. Iman will marry iman. Once you've got a man who has been working on himself 2, 3 years, 6 months, and he feels now that he's ready and he's responsible, and yes, I've stopped out all those bad things, and I've got a mindset now where I just want to do the right thing. Yeah, I have a few days where I blip, a few days where I miss Fajr, for example, or those kind of things. But next day, I assure you, I'll be back on it. I make tawbah and I go back. That person, he is working. He needs to marry somebody who is on the same level. When they get married, what's going to happen? They're going to become weak in their iman, or they're going to become strong in their iman? Undoubtedly, they become stronger in their iman. What they do, this brother sits with this sister and the wali is there. What are they going to talk about? Are they going to talk about football? Are they going to talk about the latest phone, or where the latest Primark is open? They're not going to talk about those things. They're going to talk about agreeing objectives. Where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? Are you planning on making hijrah? Are you planning on studying? How do you plan on becoming a better Muslim? What are some of your weaknesses? What would you do if your parents become ill? Those kind of questions. They will become real questions. Why? Because they've got taqwa and iman in their heads. You will know that the person is not right for you when they are thinking about, when do you want to move into a bigger house? What kind of a car do you drive? What kind of a job do you got? That kind of stuff. Those people, not trying to say that is bad and it's shallow, but if that's all it is, then maybe you just need to walk away. Those objectives have not been met, because if you don't get that, then you'll regress here and you'll regress there. It's undoubted. This is the framework. Once you've done that, so you think, khalas, she's a good sister, he's a good brother, I'm going to get married. Get married tomorrow. You got married. You're living together. SubhanAllah, she prays at night and I don't even pray at night. And she's thinking, yeah, he fasts Monday and Thursday, I don't even fast. What's going to happen? You're going to grow. There's a dars happening, let's go to that dars. Let's go meet some brothers and sisters. I know a good brother, he's got married to a good sister. Let's go meet them. You start to network, you start to grow, and your portfolio, so to speak, will increase. Then what will happen is you will see an increase of that. Going back to the foundation, which is step 1. Then you will think, subhanAllah, Allah has told us to get married and to build a family. Now I think we're ready, because we're increasing, we're becoming responsible, we've been Umrah a few times and we're enjoying this and it's becoming good. And we're living by this code here, where we are treating each other nicely, we are looking at sacrificing, we're looking at reconciliation and all those kind of things. Then you will have children. And once you have children, you will repeat that loop. You continue working on yourself, but now you're working on your children. You continue working on yourself, but now you're working on that environment that you've got. She will continue working on herself, and she will continue working as a couple and as a family. If that happens, do you think this kind of thing will spread or it won't spread? If you see now, for example, I go to Ammar's house, I think, you know, that family, he invited me to his house. Really good brother, quite generous. He's told me to come to his house. We've eaten, he, looked after me for about 2-3 hours, gave me really nice food, met his kids. My wife enjoyed company with his wife, got a lot of benefit, nice environment, came home. You know what? I want to be like that. It's inevitable. And that is how the Prophet ﷺ changed Medina. It wasn't through force. It wasn't through social media. It wasn't through anything except, look, have tawheed, increase your iman. Realize why you are here and take your life as a man from Allah as a responsibility. Take it seriously. Between you and Allah and between the rest of creation. Once you do that, work on your family. Give your family da'wah. Then get married. Then increase. Then went to Medina. What happened in Medina? People gave up their families. They even said, look, I'll divorce my wife for the sake of you. Why? Because of the importance of this framework and raising children. I mean, this is a whole different lecture altogether. I mean, we could look at this in detail in each step, but this is what this chapter is teaching us. This is what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us here. The next hadith, Muawiyah ibn Haida, I don't know if that's spelled right there, said that I asked the Messenger ﷺ, what right can any wife demand of her husband? So the Prophet ﷺ said, you should give her food. So what is the haqq that a husband has to give to her? Give her food when you eat. When you eat, you don't have a T-bone and she has fried chicken. Yeah? You don't go to, I'm trying to think, John Lewis and she goes to Primark. You don't strike her in her face. You don't insult her. You don't separate from her. Everything that you want for yourself, it's a partnership. It's that framework again. Because once you start splitting, then you're not working on yourself. You're now becoming attached to this, and you've lost the reason why you got married. Then there's a problem. Most people, men and women, are the complete opposite of this. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, they're the complete opposite of this advice that the Prophet ﷺ has given. Most people ask, but they don't act. What's the haqq that they have? What shall I do? How can I be a good husband? How can I be a good wife? And then, yeah, actually, that's not for me. Had people known and implemented the Sharia properly, this would be a proof for them and a source of nourishment in their life. And then, obviously, this would spread again. And then people would understand what Islam is actually about. The believers who show the most perfect faith are those people who have the best of behavior. And I am the best of those who are best to their wives. The Prophet ﷺ is talking about Iman connected to your akhlaq. Your Iman is connected to your akhlaq. If your Iman is strong, your akhlaq will be strong. If your Iman is weak, then your akhlaq will be weak. If it's in between, it's in between. It could also be that you show nice akhlaq, but inside you have no Iman. Iman is connected to your akhlaq. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is saying here, the best of those people who have Iman are those people who show good deeds and manners and akhlaq with other people in public, but in private they have good Iman also. They have good akhlaq also, in private. So the Shaykh is saying here, look at the connection between Iman and akhlaq in your public affairs. Then when you go home, does it make sense that you have no akhlaq, that you have no good manners? This is what he's saying. The word manners is comprehensive and includes What is manners? I think we probably looked at this before also. What is manners? That person has got good manners. What does that mean? How do you define it? And the Shaykh has given his definition. Manners has three aspects to it. You are not harmful to anybody else. If you are throwing litter on the floor, if you are smoking a cigarette and then you throw it on the floor and it's still burning, if you're cutting people off, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, if you are not preventing harm in any kind of way that you can think of, you have not got good manners. If you are a hazard in any kind of way that you are aware of, Allah's not going to hold you to account of things that you are unaware of. Like, for example, I leave my jacket there and someone trips over. That's not bad manners. But had I done that and I knew that that's not a good thing to do, that is bad manners. Preventing harm is number one. And this is a qaida in the Sharia which is very, very general. The Sharia, the biggest thing that the Sharia looks at is not to spread harm. That's the very first thing that the Sharia does. Do not spread harm. Once you stop that, the next thing is, what's the next thing? What do you think? I'm not going to be harmful, but the opposite now. So first thing is stop. Stop doing anything which is harmful. That's what you must do. Refrain. Once you've refrained and you become comfortable in your level of abandonment of that harm, then you start thinking, okay, now I'm going to start doing good. And now, unfortunately, there's jama'at, there's people who make tabligh and all that kind of stuff, but they don't understand that correctly. They will get a drug dealer and say, look, come to the masjid and just come to the masjid. And then they might even put him at the forefront on knocking on doors and trying to give da'wah. How is that possible? It's not going to create anything. What you need to do is teach people to stop and teach them why they need to stop. Once they've stopped harming themselves, then they can benefit other people. That only makes sense. Once that happens, okay, then what completes akhlaq? Completing akhlaq now is that you don't harm others. You spread good once you are able to control yourself. Then you are able to exert yourself. But then there's a very, very important point, is that when bad things happen to you, whether it's from another person or whether it's from the qadr of Allah, you are patient. That is also part of a clock. And it's very common, I mean it's not common, but you can also find people, they display good akhlaq, but when a calamity befalls them, the akhlaq is gone. Or they become doubtful. Or anything could happen. These are the components needed that which defines akhlaq. You prevent harm, you endure in good, and you remain patient in all affairs. Even if a person is harmful towards you, even if they want to come and kick your door down. 279, Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do not beat Allah's slaves. Slave women. Do not beat Allah's slaves women. So Umar radiallahu anh came to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he complained, the women have become very daring towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, don't beat your wives. That's not allowed, it's haram. Umar knocked on the door and he said, listen, if we don't beat our wives, yeah, they're going to answer back. They're going to start talking back and we're not going to have that. So the Prophet ﷺ gave permission to beat them. Again, think, this is not as bad as you think. The proof is in here is actually against it. Then many women went to the family of the Messenger ﷺ complaining of their husbands because they had become too violent. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, many women have gone round to the house of Muhammad ﷺ complaining of their husbands. This was actually part of an address that he made publicly now. The first one was Umar privately. Yeah, go on then. If they need it, then do it. But then, when he got out there, he came out and he made a khutbah. Many women have come to my house and complained to my wife about the treatment that they're getting from their husband. Those who do that and taking this as a norm, as beating your wives, they are not the best amongst you. Right, so now the Prophet ﷺ has clarified that hitting is not the default, number one, and you are not allowed to hit. He's clearly said that, don't hit. He said it twice now. But then the problem here is that Umar has come and he said yes to Umar. Why? This is probably best explained from another scenario from Umar, and this now actually shows the compassion of Umar. Umar, a man came to Umar al-Khattab and he said, I want to divorce my wife. So Umar asked him, why do you want to divorce her? He said, I don't love her anymore. She doesn't look the way she used to look. I don't want her anymore. So Umar radiallahu anh said, families are not built on just love. Families are not just... There's another narration I was looking for, I couldn't find. He actually rebuked another man who came asking for talaq. He goes, look, you got married to her when she was young and you took her when she was a gem. Yeah? Did you agree at that time? You took her in her prime. This is the peak of her life. Then you took her and you used her. In that sense, yeah? As in you've used something which is very, very good and you've benefited from it yourself. She's given you children. And now, when she's worth nothing, nobody's going to look at that prime. It's like a used car now, 50 years on or something like that. Nobody's going to buy that car from you. 50 years ago, it was prime. Now you said I want it. Now, not trying to equate women to that. The same is the opposite as well. We're talking. The point here is that families are based on this framework that we've talked about, and this is what Umar radiallahu anh was talking about. And this is the permission that the Prophet ﷺ gave. And we also know that beating doesn't mean beat. Beating means a symbol of physical contact. The Prophet ﷺ has told us that you're not allowed to hit on the face. You're not allowed to, even if you were to push your wife to signify that I'm not happy with you. Like, for example, she's coming to talk to you, look, just get away from me. That what I've just done there would consist of a beating, not as a knockout blow or something. That would be. This is what the Prophet ﷺ is talking about. So again, the proof is in the dalil itself. People have misconstrued what Umar was talking about. They went and did it the way they wanted to do it, and the Prophet ﷺ says, haram for all of you. Umar understood it, they didn't understand it. You see the point? The dalil is in the dalil itself. Umar was also asked about a woman. Okay, there's another narration. I haven't got time for it. Shall we do husband's rights? It's been an hour. Shall we do husband's rights? We can leave husband's rights next week. The place will be full of women, probably. The world, okay, last hadith. The world is a quick passing of enjoyment. And the best enjoyment, look at this, Prophet ﷺ said, the best thing that you can have in this dunya. What's the best thing that you can have in this dunya? What do you think? A nice meal. A pious woman. The best thing that you can ever have in your life is a pious woman. Prophet ﷺ. This summarizes all of the above. This summarizes that framework. This summarizes your responsibility. This summarizes what your mindset should be. How can you have a pious woman, then you go and hit her and abuse her and be nasty towards her? That's not the message of Islam, not to suppress her. What we're trying to do is keep that framework. If you are good with one another and work with one another, there is nothing better than having a home which is built on that framework. Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, piety here, the woman, the best thing of the dunya is a pious woman. Piety here refers to iman, but it also refers not only just to her actions and her ibadah, but it also refers to her ilm, her knowledge and her health and anything that facilitates her being pious. That makes sense? So this will reproduce a new generation of bright and intelligent children who are pious and have the best of. It's not good enough that they recite Quran every day but they don't know what they're reciting. It's not good enough that they might even pray all night but they don't. It doesn't benefit them in their akhlaq. It doesn't benefit them in their mindset towards the dunya. Going back to the very first thing that we talked about, Allah gave the prophets and the messengers the dunya so that they can benefit from it and not become attached to it. So this is what Ibn Uthaymeen is saying here. Piety refers to you being engaged in the dunya, which is needed for you to become perfect in your iman. Ask Allah to make this beneficial for us all and give us this framework firmly in ourselves, in our communities and societies, and brings rectification for this ummah. Barakallahu feekum. Thanks for being patient with me. And we've got questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Obviously nowadays a lot of walimas are quite there's a lot of haram women, etc.
Yeah.
Now obviously you mentioned also like regarding accepting invitations.
Yes.
Now
It's wajib, yeah.
yes, so obviously if there's a fitna, if there's a chance of there being fitna if you're mixing stuff, should you for music? Should you try and avoid it? Better to avoid it?
The best answer I can give you for that one, right, is we will find not in wali, is here. 8 conditions when responding to a walima would not be wajib. Now the ulama have said that walima here refers to a nikah walima. Not walima in Arabic language could be any kind of invitation. So I could be having a party, that's a walima. I just want to have a meal with you guys, and that. So the ulama have said that would be mustahab. If I'm calling you, let's go have a meal together, and that's mustahab for you. But when it comes to a marriage, the Prophet ﷺ has said in that hadith that we saw that he's disobeyed Allah and His Messenger, or Allah and His Messenger are free from. So the ulama have said, the majority have said that it is wajib. However, there are conditions. So now, when would it be permissible for you not to go, or when would it be wajib for you to go? It's the same sort of thing. Number 1, the person inviting you is a Muslim. Makes sense? But that doesn't mean that it's not recommended for you to go. It's still recommended for you to go, but it being wajib is because it's connected to that bond of iman. Like, the invitation must be specific to you and not general. Ibrahim, come to my daughter's marriage, walima. Specific to you. If he has just said everybody come, then that's not specific enough. So if he's addressed a group of people, so if he's sent, for example, this is what normally happens, an invitation to your house, to the family members of your house, then you don't have to go personally. The person who invites you must be the one, must not be somebody that you are abandoning. Please pay attention here. This is what I'm saying. Please pay attention here. Doing hajar, abandoning, cannot be done just to anyone. It can only be done if there is a benefit, there is a religious benefit for it. So point number 3 here is if a person is being avoided for a religious reason, then you don't have to go to his walima. So say for example, a person, he's an innovator, he's been doing certain things and you've been telling him, look, you need to stop doing that. And then he doesn't stop doing that. He said, look, khalas, I'm not going to speak to this guy anymore. And even if I see him, I'm not going to give him salam. That's permissible. It's for the sake of the religion that is permissible. For the sake of the dunya, the Prophet ﷺ said, 3 days, it's not permissible. But if you're doing it for the sake of the religion, then it's permissible for you not to go to his walima. And that abandonment continues. Condition number 4, the person inviting you must not have anything which is haram there. I think this is the question now. If there is something haram there, then you don't have to go. Well, it's not that you don't have to go. Again, is it wajib, is it haram? It's the same condition. the place where you're invited to must not have anything haram as activities, and it must not be doubtful. Okay, so now he's not telling you to do something haram, or he's saying just come, you don't have to do the haram yourself. Point number 5. Yeah? So that's inclusive of both. It must be the first call. If a person invites you time and time again after that, then you don't have to go. So say for example, a person's invited you to go to a walima, and you've went, and then he calls you to another walima and another walima, and he keeps calling you to all these different walimas, then you don't have to keep going. Khalas, I've been to one of them, and that's enough now. Some scholars said that the invitation that is wajib for us to respond to is a walima, which includes all kind of invitations, because it's the right of the brother. And this is, I think, this is what the Sheikh, it was his opinion also, that it includes all kind of walimas. But like we've said before in the very beginning, is that it's only walimas for marriage. And the 8th condition that Sheikh Pt.13 is given here, the person who is invited must not be harmed by going. If a person is inviting you to go to a wedding, and that's in Glasgow, yeah, that I'm going to be harmed. It's going to take me 20 hours to get there and back. It's going to cost me a lot of money, and I'm going to have to make a lot of sacrifices. I just won't be able to do it. In that scenario, then it's fine for you not to go. Barakallah feek. Khair ikhwan, I'll see you guys then next week, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
So also, there's the hadith about the
Oh, you got another question? Go on then.
2 daughters.
Yeah.
Is that limited to 2 daughters?
There's another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was then asked about 3. No, the Prophet ﷺ said 3 daughters, and then the person asked 2, and then he said 2. Inshallah. It's the mercy of Allah. You can't put a limit on the mercy of Allah.
You have one girl, one window.